My daughter-in-law told me I was too old to work. She said it at my own table while the kettle hissed and the porch light hummed like a tired bee. She said it softly, as if softness could hide the insult. I stirred my tea, counted to 5, and smiled. By winter she worked for me. My name is May. I am 71 years old. I live in a brick bungalow on the south side of Chicago. There are walnut trees in the back, a narrow driveway that collects dust, and a front room where my late husband kept a metal cash box for our church bake sales. I taught bookkeeping at a community college for 30 years. I know the sound of an honest ledger. It is steady. It never raises its voice. My son is Paul. He married Lena 4 years ago. She is clever and quick. She has a talent for bright words and dim math. When my husband died, I kept myself busy. I baked for neighbors. I balanced the books for the thrift store owned by our parish. I helped the youth center file its taxes. I liked the feel of a sharpened pencil and a clean column. It began with a bank card. My card declined at the grocery store on a Tuesday. The clerk tried again. The small screen blinked red. I paid with cash and walked to the bank under a low gray sky. The manager pulled my account and frowned. A fraud alert had been placed in the night. A relative had called to report that I might be double paying bills. The card was frozen to protect me. I left the branch and sat in my car until the heater cleared the fog. I ran my thumb along the worn edge of my checkbook. I am a woman who keeps lists. I do not double pay bills. I write due dates in blue ink. I staple receipts to the back page. That evening Paul came by with Lena. They brought a store cake. They sat at my table and used careful voices. Lena said work is stressful at your age. She said it would be a relief to stop. She said I could enjoy the garden and leave the paperwork to younger hands. She slid a folder toward me. It was a power of attorney. She said it would make bank tasks simple. Paul looked at his hands. He said nothing. I told them I would think. I washed cups and listened to the kettle whistle. After they left, I unlocked my file drawer with the small brass key my husband had labeled in his neat print. Inside was the trust we had signed years ago. The house and a modest investment account sat inside it with me as trustee. There was a clause that made me smile. If anyone tried to manage me without cause, the trust would pay for counsel to protect my autonomy while I remained competent. My husband loved me with documents that could stand up in court. A week later I visited the bank manager again. His name is Mr. Singh. He removed the alert and placed a note that no third party could freeze my account without a court order. He printed the note on bank letterhead and signed it in blue ink. I placed it in a clear sleeve. Paper can be armor when it is kept dry and organized. The real shift came with the thrift store. The board chair called. The previous treasurer had moved away. They asked me to fill in. It was volunteer work. It kept me sharp. I said yes. I walked into a back room that smelled of wool and lemon cleaner. I found cardboard boxes with jumbled receipts. I found a checkbook with a negative balance. And a lease that was set to increase by 20% in spring. I also found possibility. I spent 2 weeks building order. I set up a simple accounting system. I opened a separate account for sales tax. I called the landlord and negotiated a 12-month extension with a smaller increase. I moved bank deposits to daily instead of weekly. The numbers began to breathe. Saturday sales climbed. Donors started to give again. The bell on the door rang like a small victory each time it opened. Lena did not like that. She said old people make mistakes. She said I should step aside before I embarrassed myself. She raised her voice in my kitchen and told me to retire. I watched steam rise from the kettle. I decided then that I would never hand my competence to someone who treated it like clutter. 2 streets east of the thrift store sat a closed bakery. The sign still hung above the glass. Walsh and Daughter Pies. The daughter had moved away. The oven sat cold. The owner owed back rent and wanted to sell the equipment. I stood on the sidewalk and smelled old flour in the air like a memory. I had baked pies for church for 40 years. I had balanced books for 30. I had one life left to build. I went to my credit union. I met with Ms. Delgado. We studied my trust statement. We looked at my monthly budget. I asked for a small business line of credit with a limit of $75,000. She asked for a plan. I brought one. Projected revenue by month. Cost of goods. Payroll for 3 part-time workers at a fair rate. I added a cushion for repairs. I showed her a list of nearby businesses that needed morning pastry. Coffee shops. a funeral home, a small hotel. She approved me for $50,000. I signed in careful strokes. I formed an LLC with the state. I paid the filing fee. I obtained an EIN. I opened a business checking account. I met with an insurance broker and selected general liability with an endorsement for the kitchen. I asked a retired baker, Mrs. O'Brien, to walk me through the ovens. Her hands smelled like butter and soap. She showed me how to test the thermostat with sugar. When the sugar melts at the right minute, the oven is honest. The day we hung our new sign, Lena walked by. She raised her eyebrows. She said, "This is brave for someone your age." I said, "Thank you. I do not hand my joy to other mouths." I mixed flour and salt and cold butter. I added ice water and listened to the dough sigh. We sold 30 pies in the first week. We sold 60 in the second. We wholesaled scones to the coffee shop on Halstead. The owner paid in 30-day terms. I kept a ledger on the counter with a pencil behind my ear. Then the dishwasher broke. Then the mixer squealed. Then a storm pushed water under the back door. The numbers strained. I paid the plumber. I paid the appliance repair. I bought a rubber lip for the threshold. I used the line of credit for the first time and drew $8,000. I folded the receipt into my binder and kept my voice steady. I needed one more pair of hands. I posted a job. Front of house. Early morning shift. Light cashier work. Order packing. I asked for pleasant manners and basic math. The wage was higher than the chain down the street. It included a share of tips and a modest monthly bonus if the waste stayed under 3%. 6 applicants came. One was Lena. She arrived in a crisp blouse and left a resume that listed social media skills and retail experience. Under references she wrote the name of a coffee shop I knew well. The owner had let her go after a month. I called him. He said she was charming with customers and careless with the till. He said she disliked being corrected. He said she could be good with strong guardrails. I asked her to come for a trial shift. She arrived on time. She learned the square register. She labeled pie boxes in a tidy hand. She flirted with a contractor and miscounted his change. I corrected it gently. She rolled her eyes and then smiled as if it were a joke. The next morning she was 10 minutes late. The third day she arrived early and brought coffee for everyone. On the fourth day she took a call in the alley and cried. At the end of the week I offered her a position. I put the offer in writing. The wage sat in clear numbers. There was a 90-day probation. There were 2 rules at the top. Be kind. Balance the till. She read the paper and laughed a little laugh. She asked if I was really hiring my own daughter-in-law. I said I was hiring a person who can learn. She signed with a flourish. Working together uncovered our truth. Lena was quick and bright. She could sell a pie to a person who had sworn to give up sugar. She told stories that made customers feel seen. She also treated rules like suggestions. She left a tray uncovered. She rounded pennies for speed. I never raised my voice. I never used age as a weapon. I used facts. At the end of each day we counted the cash. We reconciled the card slips. We compared the total to the register tape. If the drawer was short, we wrote the number in red. If it was over, we wrote it in green. After 3 weeks, we had 3 red days and 12 green days. I covered the reds from the greens and explained why. A till that wanders cannot be trusted by banks or by bakers. She nodded. She tapped the page with her finger. She liked the green more than she disliked the rules. It was a start. One Saturday in June, a bus tour stopped and bought us out by noon. The bell rang without rest. Flour lifted into the air like a blessing. When the door closed, Lena leaned on the counter and grinned. She said I did not know work could feel like this. She said it with surprise and a little pride. She wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist and laughed. For the first time, I saw a path. 2 days later the landlord sent a notice. The building would be sold. The new owner would honor the lease but planned a larger increase at renewal. I made a list and brewed tea. A lease is a story of power told in paragraphs. I called Ms. Delgado at the credit union and asked about a commercial mortgage. She said if I could show 2/4 of profit and a reasonable down payment, it might be possible. I also called a real estate lawyer and asked about a right of first refusal. The existing lease had none. The sale would move fast. I needed leverage. I turned to what I knew. The thrift store still struggled with donations. I proposed a joint event. Pies for a purpose on Saturday. Half the profit to the store. In exchange, the parish would let us use the parking lot for overflow and the church bulletin would carry our ad. The board squeezed my hand. We baked like a small army. We sold out in 3 hours. I brought the ledger to the bank and showed a strong month. Ms. Delgado said keep going. The sale of the building closed in August. The new owner was a developer with fresh shoes and a flat laugh. He called me ma'am and said the next lease would be market rate. It would be 25% higher. He said there were other tenants who would gladly take a corner with this much foot traffic. I thanked him. I asked for 6 months to prepare. I went home and sat on the back step under the walnut tree. The leaves shook in a hot wind. I let the fear stand next to me for a minute. Then I did what my husband taught me. I looked for the line that others had missed. The building next door had a small storefront with a peeling sign. The owner was an elderly man who wanted out. He owed back taxes. He would sell for a fair price if he could close before winter. I made an offer using the line of credit for the deposit and savings from our best months. Ms. Delgado approved a commercial loan with a fixed rate and a 20-year amortization. The payment would be less than the new rent increase. We would own our walls and our oven. We would install a new hood and paint the trim a cheerful color. I slept for the first time in weeks. On the day we signed, I asked Lena to meet me early. We walked to the empty storefront. The floor was dusty. The air smelled like old cardboard. Sunlight made a ladder on the far wall. I handed her a copy of the closing packet. She read the first page and then looked up at me with wide eyes. She said, "You own it." I said, "We own it, as a company that pays every bill and every worker on time." She held the papers like they were heavy and holy. She took a breath and then did something I did not expect. She apologized. She said I had called her lazy in my mind and she had called me old in hers. She said she had pushed for control because fear had pushed her first. I told her fear lies. Work tells the truth. I told her the truth I had learned as a young wife in a small kitchen. Every pie is a promise. If you keep your promises, people come back. We moved in by October. We brought the mixer and the bell. We hung a new sign that said Walnut Street Pies. We started a fund for the youth center with a clear jar by the register. At Thanksgiving we gave away 50 pies to seniors in the neighborhood. The church ladies cried and laughed and told me my crust tasted like their mother's. 2 weeks before Christmas, I sat at the counter with the ledger open and a cup of tea cooling beside it. Lena finished the deposits and snapped the binder rings closed. She asked if she could talk salary. She said she wanted to earn more through responsibility and not just hours. I slid a paper across to her. It was a promotion. Assistant manager. A fair wage. A bonus based on waste and on-time deposits. She read it slowly. Her hands shook a little. She said, "You trust me." I said, "Trust is earned and you are earning it." Paul came in that night. He watched us wipe the case and turn out the lights. He put his arm around his wife. He told me he had been wrong to be silent. He said he had let fear make him small. He said he was proud of both of us. I poured coffee in paper cups and we stood under the porch light of the new shop. The light hummed like home. Here is what I learned. Age is not rust. Age is grain and wood that holds a house steady in a heavy wind. Work has a sound. It sounds like early keys in a lock and a kettle's clean whistle. Respect is not given to the loudest person. Respect is earned by the person who shows up, pays fairly, and keeps their word even when nobody is looking. If someone tells you that you are too old to work, keep your lists. Keep your receipts. Keep your dignity. Then build something so solid that one day, when they are ready to learn, you can hire them and teach them how to balance a drawer, a day, and a life. Subscribe to Voices by May for more unforgettable family stories.